Hello, everybody. My name is 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗏. Today we will be talking about Azure DevOps in connection with an automation test framework and with a BDD layer on top. So the agenda for today will be a general introduction about myself, then the individual components within Azure DevOps, how will this all work together, so meaning Azure DevOps with the automation test framework, and I will be showing you a small demo. So we will start with a small presentation. This will just be high level what Azure DevOps is all about, and then we will show you the demo. So who is 𝗕𝗏𝗀𝗏? So I'm an IT consultant since 2016. I'm active at Brightest, mainly now working within test automation, performance testing, and also monitoring. So meaning the LX stack. So a general introduction about Azure DevOps itself. So Azure DevOps provides mainly developer services, allowing teams to plan work, collaborate on code development, and build and deploy applications, and of course also testing of that. Azure DevOps supports a collaborative culture, so meaning that everybody is really involved within the project. So as you can see, bringing developers, managers, contributors, in the project all together in one nice platform. So what is Azure DevOps? I'll have to give. So as you can see, we have Azure Boards. So Azure Boards is to plan and track your work. Azure repos are the repositories as you know them from GitHub, but then from Microsoft within Azure DevOps itself. Of course, we have the pipelines, one of the most interesting things. Azure test plans, especially for us, one of the interesting things. Azure artifacts, and also Azure overviews. So this will all be more clear in the following slides. Let's start with Azure Boards. So Azure Boards is actually, as you know, as your typical Scrum Kanban boards to plan sprints, to put on backlog items, all those kind of fancy stuff. Just to connect your idea to release, it's Scrum ready and it's built for insight. So meaning everybody who is contributing on the project has a good overview of what is going on within the given sprint, for example. What Azure Boards also provides is customization, meaning you can actually build your own workflow, build your own way of working, build your own statuses. All those things will be a little bit more clear later in the demo, but you just have to remind that Azure really provides you with a lot of customization and also a lot of integration. So you're not only stuck with Microsoft applications, you can also integrate a lot of other different tools. So Azure pipelines, you have a couple of different options here. So you can get cloud hosted pipelines for your Linux, Mac OS or Windows applications. You're not only limited to Windows. There you can build also your web applications, desktop and mobile applications. So you have a lot of options there, and you do not only need to use the cloud environments, you can also connect your own servers, so you can do it an on-premise setup as well. So if you want to keep your data enclosed in your own environments, you also have that option, of course. So further, GitHub users or actually any other repositories can be connected to the Azure pipelines. So you do not only have to use the Azure repositories itself, although it's a lot easier to use the Azure repositories just for the integrations and to do some extra stuff, but you have the options to use both. With pipelines, you can obviously deploy faster, test faster, get faster reactions of your builds or deployments. And it's also very flexible. As you can see, you can also use Kubernetes cluster to deploy a lot of things at the same time, VMs, serverless. You have options there. As you can also see on that picture, there is also a staged pipeline. So you also have a difference between just build pipelines and stage pipelines. Build pipelines are actually only to build your code and to create an artifact out of that. As you could see in the slides before, you had the Azure artifacts that are actually small Nugget packages or small packages to keep your code compact, and then you can later on use it in your stage pipelines. And in a stage pipeline, you can actually do a lot of more extras, because you can trigger multiple things after each other, build multiple stages to do just extra stuff. Then Azure test plans. Plan and exploratory testing solutions. So you can actually build your releases, build test plans based on your releases, or you can also just create random test plans to do exploratory testing. What there's also what you can also do is use your test plans for automated testing. So you can actually make a combination. So you can make a test plan, add a lot of test cases into that, run a couple automated on your runners, and also run a couple of tests manual. You have that option as well. Of course, it will capture rich data, especially if you are testing. You want to have all your screenshots, all your extra information kept in your test plan, so you can always come back to that. Of course, you can also test across web and desktop applications, and then get the end-to-end traceability from your testing, of course. Azure dashboards, that's just what it actually explains itself. It's a dashboard where you can track all your work from the entire team or from a specific user itself. You can customize it as you want. There are a lot of options there. You can view statuses, progress, trends, access quick links in your Azure environment. So you can really create it how you want, just to get your own look and feel and your own nice way of working, of course. So there's a lot of flexibility there. Then we also have the Azure Wiki. Azure Wiki uses your team project to share information with other team members. So you can actually build your own wiki from your own project. This will really help for newcomers or just in general for extra information. This wiki supports also collaborative editing in its content and structure, so you can really also do your stuff there, really go ham, as we say. So that was just a high level introduction about Azure DevOps, just the main things that I want to talk about. Now in the demo, a lot of things will be much clearer, and we will also see the test framework in action, because that is actually the most important thing about this seminar, is the Azure with our test framework in action, of course. Let's continue with the demo. So now we will show you how Azure DevOps will work together with our test framework. The test framework is written in C# with SpecFlow, and also with a BDD layer on top of that. And also we are using SpecSync to synchronize our test cases between the test framework and Azure DevOps. So what you will see is a full link between our Azure boards, so our sprint board, to our test plan, and eventually to our test framework. So let's start with our test framework. As you can see, as I mentioned before, it is written in BDD, so a BDD layer on top of that. So it's very human readable. As you can see, these are our test cases from an example, the signing feature. In this demo, we are using our own CV tool. It's like a small application where we can do some automation testing on, and we can use that as an example. But as you can see here, we have our first test case just to verify if the user is logged in. And as you can see, very human readable. And if I go deeper into the layers, you can see here is functionality written behind that. Since this demo is all about Azure DevOps in connection with the test framework, we will not go in depth in the test framework itself, but we will just show you how the linking works from test framework to Azure DevOps. Let's go back to our sprint board. So let's say if you want to add a new item. So let's add a user story. We just give it a random name. And people worked on it. So we have tickets from developers, from testing. They worked on it. You can move them around. This is like as a normal Kanban board will work. You can also put it in testing. You can put it close. As you can see, the status will change automatically. As I mentioned before in the PowerPoint presentation, is that you can also customize this as your needs. You can really customize it as you want with different statuses, with different colors, different kind of tickets, only for testing, only for development, that you can really see the differences between them. This is all customizable. In this demo, we will not go too deep in those stuff because it's for every project different. So we will just show you the basics, how the full linking works. So for example, this user story has to be tested. As you can see, we have related items, the 2 tickets I just created, but let's say you want to add your test cases to this ticket. As you can see, every ticket gets its own unique ID. So this one got ID 32. You can also see this here, 32. This ID is used actually to make the linking between work items and test cases. So that ID we're going to use to actually add our test case to that user story. How this works is with a work item tag, for example. This is also customizable. So this is where 𝗕𝗏𝗃 comes in hand. In 𝗕𝗏𝗃, you can configure it actually as you want. If you want to use a different tag, custom tag, it's all possible, but we just work with the work item tag. So let's say our story had ID 32, so we added this to our new test case. You can actually add as many test cases as you want. So let's add 2 for this example. So let's say work item 32. We save that. And now we're going to push this to our repository on Azure DevOps. So let's say adding to this is new work item. And let's commit and sync this. So what we're doing now is actually pushing our new code to the remote repository on Azure DevOps. As you can see, I use the sync, so it will first pull everything in, all the new changes, and then push all the new changes to the repository. Now, what will happen now is a pipeline will come, will start syncing our test cases. So this is the first pipeline. So this is one we created to just check actually which test cases are new, which test cases have a new ID, which test cases are removed. So it goes always through the whole feature files that you have configured in your test framework. This goes very quick. It's a small command line script, as you can see, that just checks all the test cases and gives you just some basic information, what you have done, updated this, deleted that, just some basic information. After that, it will trigger a second pipeline. As you can see here, it's already running. So this pipeline is a very, very basic pipeline. It's actually just to check if the build is still working, and it will create an artifact afterwards. This artifact will be used in our staged pipeline, in our release pipelines, to really test our test cases, to run our test cases on the environment. So as this finishes up, we will go on to the next. We go back to our sprint board. We will open our work item we just created. And as you can see already, our 2 test cases we just configured or added the work item tag are now related to this work item just by using 𝗕𝗏𝗃. As you can see, we added this test case. Verify if user will be able to log in with a valid username and password, and verify if user is denied access with incorrect credentials. As you can see, we'll open those 2 test cases to verify that we have the exact test cases we want to add to this story. As you can see, it will also give you the information that is written in BDD, so it will always be the same as what we programmed or written here. And as you can see, those tasks are related. I think our build is also completed. Yes, as you can see, we both have a green build. So first of all, spec sync was triggered, and after spec sync is done, it will automatically trigger the build pipeline to create our artifact that we will use later. So let's go on. For now, if you want to test this, you have to, of course, create a test plan. Also for the nice linking and everything is nice transparent. So now I moved over to the test plans. Let's go to the general view. So here you can create a new test plan if you want. Let's do that for the demo. New demo test plan. You can name it as you want. You can link it to any sprint as you want. This is all customizable, of course. It will be different on any project. So now we have a empty test plan. And what we want to do now is to have like a dynamic user story where we can always add stories, add test cases, sorry, remove test cases, that we never have to manually do this stuff, but just actually have to push our new test cases to the repository, and it will automatically be updated here. And that's where we use requirement-based suites. That's something from Azure DevOps, very handy to use. So now we're going to filter on our newly created story that we made in the beginning. You can also add existing stories. It's all up to you, of course, but for the demo, we will add our newly created demo story that had ID 32. So that's where I'm filtering on the filters. You can also create them as you want. So let's add this user story, and as you can see, automatically our two test cases are added to this story. Let's say we want to add a third one. Let's do it real quick in the meantime. So let's say we want to add this one. So what we do is add this tag. We will paste that one here, save that, adding another test case. We will commit that. And there we go. The pipeline will be back in action normally. So syncing, pooling the current branch, voila, pushing everything to the repository. And if we go back to our pipeline, normally it will start as soon as possible. Voila, as you can see, our new pipeline is running again, adding another test case. As you could see, this is my commit message. Let's see how it's in action. So it's doing great. And as you know, it will trigger a second pipeline for the artifact. So let's wait on this one. Voila, it's already completed. This is, like I mentioned earlier, a very fast one. And now it's scheduling the build pipeline. Again, as you can see, it is running. But in the meantime, we can already check if our third test case is added to the requirement-based suite. And voila, our third test case is added to the suite. So let's finish that up, and in the meantime, I can show you how to run this test case automatically. So what is very important here is you can always run those things manually. The option is always there, but since we created an automation test case, it's much nicer to run it on in an environment and get our results automatically back in screenshots and all within Azure DevOps. So there we have the execute tab to execute our test cases. What we have to do, because now we're using automation, of course, we have to edit our test plan to let it know that we want to run our test cases in an automated environment, let's say. So you always have to select a build pipeline. So of course we will select our build pipeline that we always use for spec sync to sync our test cases. Always the latest build. If you want a specific build, you can always choose one. And then we will also take our release stage, let's say our staging environment where we're gonna run our test cases. So these settings are actually fine, and let's save that. So Now let's run just one test case to see if it works. And it's actually quite easy. Just select how many test cases you want in the test plan, and then you can run your test for voila. And we can also go and look at the logs, of course. So let's open that and get a in-depth view of what it's going to do now. So as you can see, it started actually with picking up our job, and it wants to run it on one of our runners. The runners, I configured them myself. These are on-premise. It's an on-premise environment. I have some small servers at home where I like to test some stuff. As you can see, server M1 is now busy running our test case. So as I mentioned, this is different because this is a release pipeline. So as you can see here, this is a release pipeline. So now it picked up my job and it's running it on the staging environment. Let's complete this, and now we can go and look at the results. But in the meantime, I will explain you what is actually this release pipeline and why we use this instead of just a normal pipeline. I want to mention that you could use a normal pipeline. It's actually quite okay to use a normal pipeline if you don't have too many or too complex situations, but it's the is a proper way to use a release stage for those kind of things, testing and so on. So what you can do here is, first of all, use the artifacts from our build pipeline. This is something that is much more compact and better for use in our release stages. And we can also add multiple stages to this release pipeline. For example, if you want to run your test cases on multiple environments, you could easily just clone this, change the settings from your release stage. If you want to run this on a different server, on a different so on, so on. You can really go crazy with this. So this is just a basic setup for running test cases from a test plan on a on-premise environment. So let's leave because we don't want to save this because now we only have one environment. And let's go back to our staging environment. And as we can see, it actually passed. So now we have a couple of ways to check our test results. So if you want to come here to the release stage, that is possible, but it's a little bit more technical, as I say, because here you just have your log results. It will explain you what it done, which run settings you used, that the test passed or failed, and then you can also view your results. But this is like more the difficult way, but the other way to get to your test results. So as you can see, sorry, I went a little bit too fast. Here you can see our past test run. If we go deeper, you can see here our test reports attached to our test run. This is obviously very important to see what happened in our test run. So let's say we open one, and then you can see that because we have written it in BDD, all the steps will be printed on our test report, screenshots will be printed, and extra log information will be printed. This is all customizable within your framework, so it's actually up to you how complex you want to make this, but this is like a very nice thing to have, of course. So that's the first way I want to show you to get to your test results, but of course you can also just go back to your test plan and see what happened there. And as you can see, our test run passed, and here you can also go further and check our test results, actually the same as we did before, but it's a more proper way to get to where you want. So here you can also download your HTML report or your logs results. They are also available here. So that's that. Now I would love to show you some small extras we have to show you. For example, our release pipelines, how we actually not set it up, but how the runners or the servers behind that will work. Because with the release pipeline, you have something like deployment groups. Deployment groups are very strong, very powerful, because you can actually create a pool of different servers. You can also give them tags to separate them from each other, so you can also use them within a release pipeline. For example, say the first stage only uses server M1, the second stage only uses server M3, and then the last stage will use both. Those things you can all configure with things like tags. You can add as many servers you want. It's very scalable and very powerful. So that's what we're using now to configure our release stage. And as you can see, if I go to the release stage that we use to run our automated tests, you can configure those things here. So as you can see, now I'm only using server M1, but we can also add server M2. Then we have two targets to run our tests on, and so on. So it's very customizable again. Voila. Then I will also want to show you maybe just a small example of a release stage with different stages. So as you can see, you can configure them as crazy as you want. This is an example of load testing with some functional testing, for example, with multiple repositories or multiple artifacts, something we explained earlier. That is also available here. So those options you also have. Then let's go quickly over the Azure repositories. Here, I don't have a lot to say about that because it's just a repository that you use. The codes will be bundled here. You can also see your history here, which build succeeded or failed here, um, which commits are done by who. So this is actually like a normal repository as you know them on GitHub. And of course, you can also add your information here. Then we also have the dashboard, of course. We mentioned that in the presentation. So here, like I also mentioned, it's very customizable. So you choose what you put on there, you can edit it, you can add a lot of different things that maybe is more useful in your environment than in my environment. It's really actually up to you what you want to show on your dashboard. But for example, as you can see here, all the synced test cases we have from Azure, from our test framework will be displayed here, and we have 12 now. The latest builds that succeeded, or so on, so on. Then also I want to show you some small thing extra. It's actually quite nice because we're working with BDD. We're actually always creating living documentation, as they call that, in the BDD environments, and we can actually just create documentation or generate documentation from our test framework. So actually, all our feature files that we have written here with the different test cases in there, we can just add a plugin. It's a free plugin you can just download out of the marketplace from Azure. You just connect it with your environment and it will automatically just sync all your test cases in this separated tab. And then you can actually have kind of a documentation from your whole test from the whole test environment. And it's actually quite nice to have, I think, because you just have to generate it and not do anything extra with that. So it's nice to have. And I think that's it. I hope this demo was clear, useful. And if there are any questions, I would love to hear them. Voila, that was it. Thank you for listening all.